Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. The situation in Canada is getting a lot more interesting as truckers and other protesters demonstrate against the nation's oppressive COVID regime. Now, the government is taking action against the protests and trying to prevent them from receiving donations. How is this whole thing going to turn out? I have with me Liberty Nation's economics correspondent and my favorite Canadian, Andrew Moran, to discuss the matter. And welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, why don't you bring us up to speed on what's going on with the Freedom Convoy right now?
Well, ever since the Prime Minister announced that he was going to invoke the Emergencies Act, it's been more of a wait-and-see approach because first he has to put that forward in the House of Commons, which will likely probably be passed because he has the support of all his Liberals and the New Democrats. But for now, a lot of the protests are starting to clear out. So you have the Ambassador Bridge, which connects Windsor to the United States. That's been cleared. You have the Couts Alberta blockade that the protesters have been leaving on their own accord. And you may have seen that video of them hugging the police. So, and of course, they're also singing "O Canada," which of course is probably, for a lot of Americans, that's the most Canadian thing you could possibly do. But for now, with this whole wait-and-see approach, the media need headlines. And their biggest headline right now is targeting the blockade or the Freedom Convoy protesters and anyone who supported it. So there was for the anyone who donated money to it, the data was leaked. So the media, CTV News, CBC, they're going through pretty much every name imaginable on that list and contacting them, demanding apologies or demanding, why they're giving money to this white supremacist rally. So, this whole thing, everyone's exploiting it to make it worse than it seems. And all it was just, a lot of these people were just standing around and hoping the COVID mandates would be removed, which at this point, it's not likely to happen.
Yeah, well, that's kind of weird because when the George Floyd riots were going on, I was told that blocking streets was a good thing. Why the change of heart?
Yeah, and also, one of the most comical media reports of this whole Freedom Convoy was when they said that the Terry Fox statue. Now, this guy is a Canadian icon because he walked across the country raising money to fight cancer. And one of the statues they said was desecrated. Now, if you look at the image of the statue, all it was someone put a sign that said "Mandate Freedom," and then there was a Canadian flag on it, and that was it. But the word they used, desecrated. When I thought of that, I thought it would be like it was last year when a lot of the protesters were toppling, statues of Prime Minister John A. Macdonald. They would actually tear it down and start smashing it and spray painting it. So yeah, the way everything is happening right now is just you spotlight all the hypocrisy of both the Liberals and the Conservatives, and of course the New Democrats, because the New Democrats proclaim that they're the party of the working class, but they've been hammering the Freedom Convoy from the very beginning, insisting that it's nothing but white supremacy.
Yeah, and that brings me into my next question. There is a lot of propaganda going on here, a lot of propagandizing. Like, honestly, I think sometimes your media in Canada puts our media in America to shame. I mean, so far, CNN hasn't tried to call up every single person involved in something that they don't like to try to shame them, but they've done other things too. But yeah, I was told that this whole thing was about white supremacy for some reason and people being mad because of brown people and stuff. I mean, what's the truth here? Is this a white supremacist trucker convoy, Andrew?
Well, okay, from the start of the Freedom Convoy, even before they actually arrived in Ottawa, the media already had their narrative, was saying all these people are just the far right minority fringe, they're a bunch of racists. And yeah, at the very beginning when they arrived in Ottawa, you saw someone carrying a Confederate flag, although he was completely covered up. He was wearing a mask, even though it was pretty much an anti-mask rally. And then a couple of people carried a Nazi flag, but that was it. And those people were pushed out of the rally. You see coverage, a lot of the demonstrators just trying to usher them out away from this because you knew that was what they were trying to do, trying to portray it as something that it was not. And the media, you have to remember too, a lot of the media we have here. So a couple years ago, I think it was before the pandemic, Prime Minister Trudeau, he established a fund for the press, to ensure that they have enough funding, they can survive, so he can provide democratic institution coverage. And a lot of these media outlets, they get money directly from the government. Of course, if you do not toe the government line, you won't get any money, because I highly doubt the Sun News Network or the National Post even is getting money. But Toronto Star, CTV News, CBC, of course, that's a government-owned property. They all need to get money, so they have to just parrot whatever the government says. And a diversity of opinion is not allowed in this country anymore.
Wow, I see. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was such a close alliance between your government and your media. I'm not surprised because we have that here. It's just not to. It's not as official, I guess, as it is in Canada.
Yeah, CBC. I mean, they get $1 billion a year from Canadian taxpayers.
Wow. Yeah, that's insane. That's insane, and I hope that America doesn't get to that level. But we'll see what's happening. But you mentioned the Emergencies Act. Trudeau is trying to invoke that. If that passes, what does that mean? What does that give the government the power to do?
Yeah, so the primary thing is that it gives the RCMP the power to enforce municipal laws. So you're pretty much the RCMP.
What's the RCMP?
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Those are the people with the
the Mounties,
the due south, the red coat and the horse.
I love those guys.
Yeah, so it gives them more power to go in the streets, remove them, and all that stuff. But I think the biggest thing about the Emergency Powers Act is the financial side of it, which is is interesting because I'm the economics correspondent. I'm always obsessed with finance. So this is the biggest thing. So under the Prime Minister's right hand woman, Chrystia Freeland, who of course is an inevitable successor when it comes to leading the Liberal Party of Canada, she announced that the crowdfunding platforms and the banks, they need to report suspicious transactions to the government. The banks are allowed to either suspend financial services to anyone suspected of supporting the Freedom Convoy, or they can freeze their bank accounts, which is unprecedented in this country. Truckers' licenses, they could be revoked. Insurance could be suspended. Even tow truckers who've been apprehensive about supporting law enforcement with this whole thing, they'd be compelled to help police, or the RCMP at least, to remove these truckers from a lot of these areas. So this thing is having tremendous financial implications, which has me, I'm going to write an article in this weekend talking about why Trudeau is the face of why you should never have digital money. Because if the government has this type of power for your bank accounts, imagine what they have if they had a digital loonie. And what's also ironic too is that the Prime Minister, he says that this whole blockade, all these Freedom Convoy, it's hurting the economy, it's decimating everyone. But that's what Trudeau did for the last 2 years. And of course, the Conservative premiers across the country, they've decimated the economy's lockdown. So it's absurd when he's blaming them for, hurting the economy when he's been doing that for the last 2.5 years. Or you can even go back when he became Prime Minister in 2015, if you want to go that far.
Yeah, I actually agree with them. I mean, the Freedom Convoy is destroying the economy. That's his job. He's supposed to do that. They can't just be encroaching on what Trudeau's trying to do. But
to be fair, there's actually a columnist. His name is Brian Lilly. So he writes for the Sun News, and he was discussing how these blockades do hurt jobs. They do hurt parts of the economy because you're having $150 billion in trade a year going between the U.S. and Canada. And he says it's best to just target the government, because if the government's not hurting by this at all, it's actually empowering them. It's emboldening them to expand their power. So I think that's also an interesting argument you can make.
Yeah, and that is an interesting point too. That I think that argument does have merit. But last question: what's the end game here? What do you think is going to happen with this whole thing?
Well, I think of those financial repercussions. I think the convoy is just going to go home. You're already seeing this. Coutts, Alberta, the Ambassador Bridge. Who knows if people are going to leave Ottawa in the coming days? But what's interesting is that there have been some rumblings as of late among a lot of the protesters and organizers that they want to remove their money from the financial system as on the 21st of February. So a sort of a bank run, if you will. So if you can only imagine if the same number of people who attended these protests take their money out of the system, that would have huge repercussions, huge consequences for the banking system itself. That said, I wrote an article recently on Liberty Nation discussing how this would perhaps lead to consequences that the Liberals and NDP traditionally would not want. So now that the Trudeau, he's inevitably going to it's inevitably going to pass in the House of Commons on Parliament Hill. Future governments are going to use this. It's inevitable they're going to use it. Conservatives are going to use it against Indigenous. NDP is going to use it on future anti-government movements. So it sets up a terrible precedent for the future of this country to invoke these things. Now, at the same time, the government already abused its power over the years since Trudeau became Prime Minister. Even Harper, when he was the Prime Minister, he abused his authority. You had the federal government spying on 33 million people during the pandemic. You had Trudeau using the public purse as his own bank account to go on these lavish vacations and give money to his family to be part of the We charity. So this is just another step in the prime minister's evolution of being a statist, or some people say a dictator. I won't go that far yet. But at the same time, Trudeau, he said he has an admiration for the dictatorship in China because it can get things done. So that's his frame of mind. It's being seen in public policy, and that's what Canadians get from voting a drama teacher into office.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, it's quite a dire outlook. I hope you're wrong about this, but from the little I know, I don't think you are. But definitely here at Liberty Nation, we're going to be keeping an eye on it. So thank you for joining the program, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser, or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
Maybe tracking polls sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.